Hi there! The Theremin episode of today will be kind of atypical. In fact, we will not address any electronic aspect of it. Instead, I will show you what I did to build the case for the instrument, from choosing the wood for it to how to use it. The choice of materials is going to be unconventional because I did not go to the store to buy the materials. Instead, I recycled something that I already had at home and I built some specific part with my 3D printer. For what concerns the actual building of the case, be warned, I am not good at all to work with wood and related items, so I did what I could to obtain something functional and that would resemble the model of the case used in the original device, the one built by its inventor, Leon Theremin. I thought that using wood and make the case look like the original Theremin would have been a nice way to celebrate the centenary of the device, which is considered the first electronic musical instrument in history. In fact, although the Theremin was patented in 1928, its first construction is dated on October 1920. But now, without any further ado, let's dive into this episode. I had on the side the container of an old dartboard, one of those that use plastic pointed darts and has an electronic scoreboard. The scoreboard broke a long time ago and since then I moved to a classic dartboard, but I saved the case in the hope that someday it would become useful. And now it is the time to recycle that case and use the material to make the box of my Theremin V.2. You can see that it was mostly a flat box with two doors. The back panel is made of a cheaper wood taped with some black film, and I decided to use it from the bottom of the Theremin case. For the back panel, where the loudspeaker will be located, I found this already made panel that was once used for an old entertainment center that I had. I knew that if I saved it I would have found good use for it. My plan was to use this panel as a starting point for the rest of the case, adapting the other dimensions to this one. The doors of the old dartboard case will provide the sides and the top for the Theremin box. And so here I am dismantling the dartboard box. I started with removing the doors from the rest by unscrewing the hinges from the doors themselves first, and then detaching the magnetic lock. Same thing for the other door. Then I removed the hinges from the body of the case because I thought I could reuse some of those wooden strips that make the sides of the box. And finally I detached the magnet that was once holding the doors in the closet position. I put on the side all this hardware because, I'm sure I will find a way to reuse it in the future. And please don't call me a hoarder, I'm sure that you do the same thing, at least with used electronic components, don't you? The side panel seemed to be glued to the bottom with the addition of some small staples to hold them in place, so I had to pray them out. And actually, since I didn't really need the sides but only part of the bottom, I ended up leaving them there. Plus, while removing the first side, I realized that they were not real wood but just some very thick cardboard covered the outside with veneer, so I left them alone. It was at this point that I realized that the bottom was covered with some sort of black paper tape rather than painted, so I ended up cutting it with a knife to separate the two parts. So now that I had all the wood I needed, I had to take some measurements to cut the pieces I needed in the right size. The pre-made black panel was used as a reference point, and I used that to size the two side panels of the Theremin case. The fact that the top side of the doors were not squared with the sides helped me to avoid a couple of extra cuts to make them that way. In fact, the plan was to have an inclined surface to use it as a music sheet holder. Next, I made the traces for the bottom side of the Theremin to be cut from the bottom of the old dartboard case. I had to pay special attention in making the part square, since I could not use anything as a reference for that cut. Using some drawing tools helped me achieve my objective. Once I had drawn the rectangle, I made sure it was well squared by measuring the diagonals, which are supposed to have the exact same length. And now to the part that gave me more trouble, the cutting of the boards. This is not something I am an expert of, so I did some research for the best way to do it, and still I was able to really make a mess here and there. I started by putting a guide for my saw, which was something very difficult to start with, and then it was also difficult for me to keep the saw against the guide. but at the end I was able to make it. Not without a lot of noise and difficulty in keeping the tube of my shop vac closer to the blade to limit the amount of dust in my lab. Something much easier to do was the painting of the PVC pipe that I will be used to hold the pitch antenna at a certain distance away from the box, and especially from the volume antenna. The only negative side is that I had to use several layers of spray paint to make sure that it will not scratch over time. Another aspect to the design of this box has been the usage of supports made with my 3D printer to hold in place the panels that make the main body of the case, not to mention the other parts that are there just to mask little cutting errors, and the front panel, which I decided to make out of plastic rather than aluminum to speed up the process. The plastic is not able to shield against electromagnetic interference, but so is the wood, so I will have to cover the whole inside of the box and the back of the panel with some conductive material. But this will be a topic for another video, which will be centered on the EM shielding of the whole Theremin. Here are the supports for the two antennas, an adaptation of the supports used for the Theremin version 1. The supports will be located on the inside of the box rather than the outside to make the whole thing look better. The support for the volume antenna is exactly the same as the one from version 1, but the support for the pitch antenna is different because I will be using a PVC pipe that is smaller in diameter, and so I had to readjust the size of the original cylinder. The OpenSCAD files for the antenna supports and all the other 3D printer pieces will be available of course in the zip file for the Theremin Project on eleneasy.com. See the video description for further info of that. If you plan to use these files, you may also need to change some of the sizes to adapt them to the size of your box. And these are the supports to hold together the panels of the case. I had to print 8 of them to reinforce all the edges of the box. This instead is the mask that will be encased in the front panel. It has holes for the 3 potentiometers, the one for the pitch sensitivity, the volume sensitivity and the actual volume. And then there is a hole for the power switch and another hole for switching in and out the audio filter. And finally, the 2 holes for the 2 LEDs of the sensitivity control, which will go just above the volume sensitivity potentiometer. This one is the frame that will be inserted on the front panel to hide the irregularities in the wood caused by my poor sewing skills. The little piece in this file will be used to frame the opening of the jack receptacle that can be used to connect the Theremin to an external audio amplifier. The 2 larger pieces instead are the guides to align the top panel on the rest of the box. This panel will be removable so that I can access the inside of the box to put the electronics in it, and in case I will need to do some repairs or enhancements in the future. This one is supposed to be a cover that will surround the hole from which the PVC pipe for the pitch antenna comes out of the box. Again, this has no real use besides hiding imperfections of the hole. And this is the piece that will hold together the PVC pipe and the actual copper tube that makes the pitch antenna. This one too has been stolen from my previous design of the Theremin V.1, but I had to resize it because of the new PVC pipe diameter. The speaker inside the box has the same shape and size of the one used in version 1 of the Theremin. In this case I will use 2 of these brackets to hold it in place behind the fabric of the back panel. It was now time to start putting the pieces together. I started checking that everything would nicely fit together to make sure I didn't make any mistake measuring the pieces before cutting them. Once I was sure that everything was fine, I started tracing the position of the first support for the edges, and then I glued it in place, holding it firmly until the glue dried out and cured. Of course, I put too much glue and I had to start cleaning everything once the glue started spreading all around. Oh well. I also realized that when I started tightening those braces, the support started sliding, so I had also to spend some time fixing it back into position. And here are the 3 brackets in place on the bottom panel of the box. I then started to attach the side panels, followed by the back panel with the fabric on it. Again, I traced the position of the bracket on the panel before applying the glue, to avoid putting the glue in the wrong area of the panel. This whole process of gluing the panels together took a long time, because I had to wait for the glue to dry before moving on to different sections of the panel. In one instance, I didn't wait enough, and the 2 parts detached as soon as I exerted a very small force on them, so I had to clean everything from the old glue and start all over. If I only was as good as with electronics to work with wood. Anyway. Drilling the holes for the antennas and other components was another thing I did wrong. I should have done the hole on the panels before gluing them with each other. It would have been much simpler. Something to remember for the next time, if I would ever work with a wooden box again. Well, at least I did not make the mistake of using directly a tool with the final diameter of the hole. I first drilled with a smaller tip, and then I used a larger one. And of course, I did not have a tip of the exact size of the copper tubing, so I had to work a little bit to enlarge the holes with what I had. The large squared hole from the front panel was a whole different story. For that I needed to use a saw, but without cutting the whole board. And so I drilled a hole large enough for the saw to go through on each corner of the rectangle, and then I used the saw to cut each side one by one. And again, since this electric saw generates a lot of dust, I used a shop vac to try remove it while I was cutting, at least most of it. Once the hole was cut, I checked that I could actually fit the plastic panel and its frame, and actually, as you can see, looked very nice. I kept going putting together all the pieces until I ended up with this. You can see there are a lot of imperfections that I need to fix. I will do that with some extra glue and some paint later. Hopefully it will be enough to make a decent looking box. Not perfect, but I don't know, at least decent. You can see how the top panel can be removed to access the inside. Right now the inside is very poor looking, of course, but it will look better later. Here are the brackets to hold the loudspeaker in place. And this one is the hole for the pitch antenna, this other one is the hole for the audio jack, and this is to connect the external amplifier. On the opposite side you can see the holes for the volume antenna, the one for the fuse holder, and finally the one for the power cable. And the top panel, as we've said already, can be used as a music sheet holder. I had to draw a line or where to finish this video to avoid making it too long and boring, so I decided to schedule 2 more videos to complete the Theremin assembly. In the next video on the Theremin, I will address the issue of electromagnetic interference, or EMI, and I will go with you through all the steps to shield the inside of the box, so to prevent high frequency signals to leak in and out of the box. The video after that will be dedicated to the assembly of the electronic parts of the Theremin, and of course I will test that everything works fine, trying to play the Theremin for you to enjoy. Well, you know what I do for that. That's all for today. If you liked this video and the channel, please subscribe and consider becoming a patron. Links for the donations are in the description below. See you soon in the next video, and in the meantime, as usual, happy experiments!